Remember, we talked about the key of this is mostly thought process and understanding what could be going on behind the scenes rather than just facts. The podcast is not a facts throwing them at you podcast. But take a look. And I'm not the first person to say this by any means. There's been at least 4 review papers put out over the last 30 years that have actually done even simulations of this. And they've showed that, like, look, we see this all the time as cardiovascular doctors. This is mostly medical-based literature. They'll say, look, we see this all the time. Like, if you can get the same number, but what's going on looks like it's very different. I can get a 48 millisecond reading on my app that says that's my heart rate variability, but I don't know if underneath that number, my heart rate was going up, it was going down, it was doing some kind of sinusoidal up and down pattern, it was doing something weird, like just flat for a while, then went up as if I like stood up all of a sudden during the middle of my recording. So that's one of the limitations that you are going to be stuck with the devices that you get if they report just a number. I know the Oura Ring gives a graph during sleep, and that's great, but that's not how I use my wearable devices, right? I would like to know how things are working before and after exercise, or before and after recovery, before and after a breathing protocol, or a cryogenic session, or cold therapy, or heat therapy. I want to know what's going on, but right before and right after those time periods. And if I just have a number, sometimes it doesn't seem to be informative enough. So that's the yellow flag for me, is I've seen this with lots of people, including myself, that I can get the same number and there is something very different going on. As a matter of fact, so this one, another possibility where the numbers come down slowly, this is really common if you've heard about something like heart rate recovery. So if you do any kind of, let's say, workout, even like say doing the laundry, doing some chores, if you do some stuff for a while, it takes some effort, and then you decide, I'm gonna sit and relax. Your heart rate is probably gonna come down because sitting and relaxing is a lot easier than doing exercise, doing chores, whatever it is. And so lots of times, if you measured somebody right after something, you might see this slow decline and a slow, decrease in their heart rate numbers. Conversely, right, there's lots of ways, I'm sure you can already imagine this, and if you want to, take a second, think about it. There's lots of ways where your heart rate might be going up when you're measuring it. Again, I mentioned like getting some level of stress because you're planning ahead for an event, right, presentation, maybe a trip, or you're getting ready to work out, right? Or, you decided like, I forgot something, I've got to go. So there's lots of ways where the heart rate can go up during the time you're measuring, and you'll get some kind of number, and now you don't know if that number means it was going up, it was going down, it wasn't changing. I don't know, I just got a number. Let's take a pause here real fast and come back to this frequency domain idea. So this is all time domain. You receive a number, it says 48 milliseconds. There is in the literature, and actually in one of the most classic papers about trying to figure out what goes into your heart that creates this variation, was a paper that used something called the frequency domain. And I think I mentioned that this is the paper that used some chemical blockers. It was with dogs. And it found that if you used a certain kind of blocker, you would take away one part of the frequency domain. If you use another blocker, you take away a different part of the frequency domain. And the blockers were specific for certain types of neurons. And that was one of the ways they showed your heart has 2 inputs from your autonomic nervous system, and it appears that they work together to create this variation. That was like back in the 80s. It was one of the early, really good papers. There's also another paper using the frequency domain that is trying to use variability as a training protocol, meaning you would get up in the morning, you would test your heart rate variability, and then it would give you a idea of what to do in a general idea. So the idea was people were trying to work on their cardiovascular capability, so keep one simple goal. It would say whether you should consider doing a high intensity workout, a light intensity workout, or rest. That's a pretty cool paper, actually. We'll come back to that either a little bit today, but probably another time I'll talk about it when we get into the training ideas, because while that paper is a really good start, it's a little bit old right now. It's about 6 years old, I think, maybe a little bit older. There are some, there's some obvious questions here, which is like, does it work for other types of goals? Does it work for longer than a month? We'll come back to that.